Welcome to Between the Before and After, a podcast about the stories that shape us. I'm your host, Coach John McLernan, and each episode I bring you an inspiring guest with a moving story that shines a light on the power of the human spirit. Before we dive in, I want to let you know about two very important things. Number one, the stories shared here are often gritty, raw, and vulnerable, and very likely will include speaking about sensitive topics suited for a mature audience. Number two, this podcast is also broadcast live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. So on whatever platform you follow myself or Freedom Nutrition Coaching, you have the opportunity to participate in this discussion during the live stream. And we encourage your participation both by commenting and asking questions. And so this podcast is about exploring the stories that take place between the before and after photos, not just in the realm of weight loss, but in all areas of life. So let's dive in. All right, welcome back. It is my pleasure today to be hosting Kimberly Bell all the way from somewhere in Maryland, where it's very warm.
Yes.
How are you doing today, Kimberly?
I'm doing great, John. How are you?
You know what? As we chatted about just before I got on, I'm a little bit warm and sweaty too because I just finished mowing my lawn. And
Right. We're both just like we're both in sync right now.
Yeah.
Weather-wise.
Yeah. Well, my studio is in the basement of my house, so it's a little bit cooler down there. So I have that as an upside.
Well, see now. Okay. So now you had to just rub it in, right?
Yeah. Well, I also get like 8 months of winter here in Alberta, so there is that trade-off.
Okay.
Yeah. So before we dive into your story, let's just get a little bit of present day backstory. Where are you at right now, and what do you do?
I am in Maryland. I am in Princess Anne, Maryland. I'm like 25 or 30 minutes, maybe roughly, depending on how I drive to Ocean City, and the most tourist beach around in Maryland. So I've been a case manager for over 15 years. I love what I do. I navigate cases and resources for different families and the different family dynamics, and it's just been such a pleasure doing what I do. And then with the COVID and then getting back to being able to put my eyes on them, even if they haven't seen someone for 2 years, it's just a bonding time, just the time that's saying, okay, somebody else cares and want to make sure that you are having your services rendered far as the family is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. So a case manager, meaning are you working with children and families in like difficult circumstances?
Yeah, they have to qualify for the state program, but I work for individuals that's maybe on the caseload as a child or a family member, grandparent, mother, father, and they have either an aide, which is a family relative, but I just navigate and monitor the services that's in the home to make sure that they can stay in the community safe, or if they're in a nursing facility, transition them back home. So that's just one of the highlights. It's different families, different situations, so it's good to have an eye and just scope right particular for that family, just trying to give them the best. Yeah.
And so I think that the work that you do now is very closely and intimately connected to your own story. Would that be accurate?
That would be. It seems like I fall right into the public sector, right?
Right.
And helping, right?
Yeah. And so in one sense, like when you're working with children who maybe especially who have like some sort of troubled background or disadvantaged background, you have an intimate understanding of what this is like because of your lived experience. So it's very different from maybe doing a course on it and reading a book about it. You've lived a very difficult experience.
Right. Yes, you're absolutely right. And that mother bond and even the grandparents bond, or, a family member that's raising them bond, it just comes closer to home because, as you said, I've experienced along with the education, because I do have a degree, but it just helps to have that balance and to be able to compassionately serve the best that I can and that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if we were to rewind the clock a little bit here, we go back to kind of early childhood. One of the first things that's mentioned in your story is being abandoned. How old were you when that happened?
I was 5. I was 5 when I was dropped off, yes, by my biological dad. And it's so
Mm,
crazy, John, because as transparent as I am, like, people would want, especially with the family and with the generational era, would like to um sugarcoat it, I guess is
mhm,
that's what
mhm.
they would say, or give
Right,
it
right, right.
another name. And I
Yeah.
had to struggle with that, John, to be really accepting and be real and
Mm, mm.
not live a lie and just
Yeah.
say exactly what it is,
Yeah.
and how it affected me. And as you state, at 5 years old, there was a traumatic experience that happened. That day, and it was one of the worst, because it wasn't
Mm,
the first physical altercation, but that it was the worst. And
yeah.
I seen blood. My older sister seen blood from my mother's face. And I just wasn't shocked. I couldn't cry. My 2-year older sister was crying and yelling and trying to pull my dad off, but I just was frozen. And I can remember, just like the older I get, the
Mm,
memory is still so vivid of this little child shocked and
yeah.
froze. And so he did what he did, and he took my sister and my mother to my grandparents' house, which is her parents. And then we traveled, just him and I knew that they had words, and she was saying, go ahead and take her, which was me. And
Mm,
that's the last time I physically lived with her, was that
wow.
day. And I'm traveling with my dad in the back seat, not saying a word, being solid, because I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what to do. And he took me to his older sister's house, which is my paternal aunt. And I
Yeah.
remember them as they were family members, but I couldn't recall that I lived, that I stayed overnight with them. I just knew that they were relatives. I knew that these
Mm,
wasn't strangers. That's the only known fact that I knew. And he
right.
said, "I'll be back." He had words with my mom. Of course, he was still upset, and you could tell, you could
Mm,
just
mm,
tell.
mm.
And she was talking to him, and he told me he would be back, and that was the last. That was the last time I
Yeah.
stayed with any them two at all.
Right. So you were 5 years old. So prior to that, I mean, what memories do you have, like, in the first 5 years of life? I guess really it probably comes between ages of 3 and 5. It
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
like it was a pretty chaotic situation
It
here.
was. It was. I do remember it spiritual. I
Mm,
do remember us going to church a lot. I remember my dad, my biological dad, was a musician. He played the guitar,
mhm.
and loved it. We were in and out of church a lot. I remember sleeping in church, because back then, now that I'm known, it was a Pentecostal apostolic churches that
Mhm.
they were attending. So, as people know that background, you stayed in church a long time, tarrying and speaking in tongues and stuff. But at little, I remember falling asleep a lot of times in church and going to church. And
Right, right.
I do remember the chaotic. It just never, as you were saying, from 3 to 5, felt that it was a loving environment between them two.
Mm,
I felt that there was always something. And then not only that, it was um a icing on the cake with that, because it wasn't never a loving feeling from my mom to me. And
right.
I'm looking at
Oh,
this woman
man.
from 3 to 5, or as you said, my knowledge is being aware that this is my
Mm-mm.
mom, and I'm living with her. She's taking care of me. Um, as this beautiful brown skinned woman that I just wondered for almost every day, what could I do to make her happy? What could I do to make her have a smile on her face? What could I say or do? How much of a better child could I be to see her laugh? It's just not about me, but just towards me,
Mm, mm,
her
mm.
being kind. And that, John, built something inside of me that I had to take a look at later in life, because what I was building from this broken foundation of accepting and validation love
Mm.
hurt me down the road. Hurt me down the
Yeah,
road.
I can, I'm a father to a 14-month-old, and so I'm just very early into my journey as a parent. But I mean, I already know just how much love I feel for this little human being. Like my wife and I just look at each other sometimes and go like, this is something that like we couldn't even imagine like how much love we have for this little person. So it's hard to imagine when somebody doesn't have that. But I could just I just think about how important that is for healthy emotional
Yes,
development to
it
have
really
that.
is. And from the, as you said, emotional development, because we're
Mm.
talking about the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
yeah,
you had a really, really rough, like, foundation laid down, and then you just get dropped off, was it some family's place?
hmm
But
And,
that
and
that's
and John,
that
I do want to say it
mm,
was quite different with my biological father and my sister. The
mhm,
feelings and emotions were different from
right.
my biological father and my sister. I did feel the emotions of they love me. He would come in periodically and throw me up and hug me, as you were saying, about
Mm,
your
mm,
kid,
mm,
and I felt that difference.
right.
But the confusion always lied with what I didn't feel from her. I just want
Right.
to clarify that.
Absolutely, yeah, there's like a there how do you it's hard to get any sense of closure from that because there was just this open loop left there, this open wondering, like, "What could I have done differently? What could I have done?" And I mean, I think, like, the children are just so beautiful, I just again, I think, like, "Man, how do we not just love them?" All I wanna do
Right,
is hug my
right,
kid all day long, like,
right.
you
You
know?
sound like my adopted mom, and that's what she said. She said
Yeah.
it was ironic that he called her when I was born, and I interrupted this call interrupted her stories, and she said she came. Now this is a story I never got any closure or any story other than this story from my birth mom. This was come from my adopted mom, which was my
Mm,
paternal aunt that later on adopted me. Said that during the birth of me, he called her and said she had the girl and come to the hospital. I interrupted the stories, and as she said she came and looked at me, as you were saying, looking at this baby. She said you were just like the sweetest brown
yeah.
little human being,
Aw,
such a
yeah, yeah.
sweet. And said she thought of Kim Hughes on the
Okay.
story because I interrupted her stories because she said Kim Hughes had this characteristic of such a sweetness and humbleness. And she said she looked at my dad and she was like, "Why don't you name her Kim?" So that's how kind of my name came about because I just
Oh, that
yeah,
is
right,
awesome.
right,
And yeah, so you go on to live with your paternal aunt and,
right.
did you see much of your dad from there on out?
Periodically, him and my mother had other children, and then they it did eventually divorce.
Mhm,
But periodically, I did see him, and I remember a shift because as I was seeing him, he was promising for me to go with him, and I would get packed, and he would never
mm.
show up. So I
Oh,
remember a
man.
shift around 6 or 7 that my adopted dad, which is her husband, my
Mhm,
paternal aunt's husband, they were married when I came there to him and stayed married.
mm,
Um, said to him, had some words with him about that, and he stopped. And I remember a little gap, and then
mm,
he came back. And as he was coming back, periodically updating my mother, which is his sister, his older
mhm,
sister, about his life, about pastoring, about another family, about remarrying, about having other kids. He never acknowledged I was his child. Like
mm.
nothing. Like I was confused. And I was like many times looking at him in a daze. But of course, that generational era, you were a child, you couldn't speak your mind. And saying,
Mm.
did he forget that
Did
yeah, I'm his child, and I really would want to go with him, but
no
how
kidding.
do I and yeah, all these things in
Yeah.
my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just there's something like, and again, I just referenced my own little boy, like, my studio's downstairs, and when I come up the stairs, like, his face just lights up, and he says, "Dada," and immediately he comes
Yeah.
racing over,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't imagine what that would do to his psyche if I was to reject him, and here this was happening to you.
Right.
Now, so you're living with your paternal aunt and your, I guess it's your uncle, um, did did they became your adopted parents? Is that
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yes. And I didn't even know. I
They
didn't
did
know about that birth certificate until I got my first job. Yeah. It
oh,
was a generational era that what goes on in the house stays in the house, and you didn't do
mm,
anything to make the family members look bad. So it was like kind of hush hush. And I remember her introducing me to their church, which their church was AME Zion. And she said, "People are nosy, Kim, but you're our child. just remember that you are me and Daddy Bill's child. And she was saying that to me because we're still living in our hometown. Instead of
Right.
just enforcing the truth and having me accept and love the truth, it was
Mm.
more like,
Hide it.
yes, yeah, to make everyone look, as not as
Right, right, right.
right.
But we don't want, and that's such a natural human thing, I guess. We really grapple with acknowledging sort of the truth of our messy lives.
Yes,
We
that
feel
we're
this
human.
pressure. Yeah, that we're
Yes,
human. Yeah, we really feel like this pressure to
yeah.
just present an image before the world, and I think this is what's really powerful about your story. And so what was it like? So did you stayed with him all the way until you graduated high school?
Well, I quit school, but yeah, I
Mm-mm.
stayed with them you know, until I was old enough to leave. And when
Right.
I decided to leave, yes,
Right. So, because now I'm curious about if we're looking at like 5 and you left at what time? How old were you when you left and quit school?
I was around 17.
17. Okay.
Hmm.
So between 5 and 17 there, you've had this really sort of traumatic foundation laid down, this one of abandonment, wondering about love, kind of being confused, being told to almost like be ashamed of your past, so don't
Yeah,
speak about it, that
yeah.
sort of thing.
Just
How did that
yeah, just
yeah,
accept it. Yes.
how
Yeah.
did that affect like the way that you would have formed, like did you have siblings, like adoptive siblings?
No, I was their only child.
Okay. Were they unable themselves to have children? Is
She
that
was. She
right?
was, and this was his second marriage, and I believe her
Okay.
second marriage. But I know that it was his second marriage for sure, and he
Mm-mm.
had older children. So, um, I was their child together.
The
Yeah.
so in a sense, you were then got raised as an only child,
Yes. Yeah.
and maybe I guess maybe there's some benefit to that, but so between how did that play out for you then in terms of just trying to make friendships with kids and things like
It's crazy because I always had this longing, especially when I seen the family dynamics of one of my childhood friends only had was from a single parent home, which was her mom, and I
mm,
longed, and I knew that that was her real mother. So I just admired, and I just wanted to be always around them. And then there was another childhood friend down the street that had the mother and father, and it was always a longing. It was always a
yeah,
yearning
yeah,
of look like I'm from the outside looking in and saying, "Oh man, I wish that was me." Or and not that I did not
mm-mm,
love my parents. Don't get me wrong. It was
mm,
just because the foundation was broken,
yeah,
and I was not
yeah,
willing to accept that this is just the way it is. You know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, very
and
hard.
yeah, and I think that foundation that gets laid in those formative years, the first 7 years of life in particular are so important to a child's development. And then we think, so you quit school. Was school something that was kind of difficult for you at the time, or what pushed you to quit
It
school?
it was, but I would want to say, John, now back then they wasn't educated either. And that's
Mm,
what
okay.
makes me so much of an advocate. And I'm like, I love it when I hear about foster parenting and treatment, classes for both parents, for the parents and the foster parents and the, adopted parents and all that, and the resources it's given. Because my family, my mother and father, the adopted parents did not have any training. They did not have any training. They just
Hmm.
did what they did best. Exactly.
Right. They did the best they could with what they
Yeah.
knew, but they didn't
Yeah.
they didn't have much. They weren't
Right.
equipped with much.
Because they been, like you said, that word equipped, I love it.
Mm,
I really believe, like you said, that up to 7 years old would have been able for me to transition and deal with more of the traumatic experience in my mind than continue to growing up yearning and
mm,
grieving,
mm.
because I was grieving as well.
Yeah,
I was
of course.
separated. It was a loss. It was completely a loss. And I'm saying, but why?
Yeah,
I
without
don't
a
want
loss,
this
without an
to be a
answer.
loss. Exactly. I don't want
Yeah.
to, I want to stay, no matter what the treatment is. I want to stay with these people that I knew. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Yeah. And so, your mom, your biological mom, have you ever seen her since? Have you had the opportunity to reconcile?
I'm living in the hometown with her.
Hmm.
And I had numerous occasions approached her, ran into her, was invited to a couple of her birthday celebrations by my sibling. Um, tried to reach out. I've even asked one time when one of my siblings was having a child to get some answers. Never
Mm.
have never got any response from her. Even down now with the book, she has not responded to me. She's not came to me. She's not told me any different stories than what my paternal, aunt has told me, or my father
Mhm.
has told me. And I had found myself trying to buy her love, trying to force love, till I had to accept the truth of she the last statement that she had made, and she said, "You have a mother," is that she did what she thought was best for her to give me to another mother, and
Mm.
to cut the ties of having a daughter, which was me, and relationship, and that was it. And that was one of the hardest things, John, that I had to accept, and
Mm.
not, and feel free with it, and say,
Right,
but
right.
it's okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll go back one step here and go, when you quit school,
Mhm.
where did you go from there?
When I quit school?
Mm. 'Cause you're 17, so you didn't, graduate high school at that point, is that correct?
No, because I had a baby at 15.
Okay.
Yeah, we gotta back up a little bit from
Well, yeah, well,
the school. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
so
had a
you had a
baby at 15.
you had difficult high school then.
Yeah, from the little bit of time that I did go back after I had the child and was pregnant, because in the 70s it wasn't known of having, and this,
Right, right.
having a child at that young. When I had her at 15, I was the youngest one at the hospital having her at that time. Yeah,
Right, and so there's a lot of shame connected to that as well.
very much, very much.
Right. And was this, with someone who you're in a relationship with at the time?
It was, but it stemmed from my first sexual molestation, or my first introduction with sex, intimacy,
Mm.
with my uncle, with one of the uncles from an extended family member that came to our house. And because my parents were so religious, they didn't know about it. But because they were so religious, they felt that they were helping him, for allowing him to stay and get his life bonded even more stronger with Christ, and
Right, right.
becoming a new creature, because he had joined salvation, but he had prior history of sexual molestation that he had done time. But they were so into the spirituality, and God is a forgiving God, is that once he done that and demonstrated that they were going to do all they could to help him. So it wasn't where they intended, but once they did open the doors for him, he laid prey. And it wasn't about a matter of time, for about up in a year, that he introduced me to the sexual molestation.
Right, and how old are you when that started
I was
happening?
12.
12.
Yes.
And, like, that in itself is, again, how incredibly traumatic and confusing, because this is supposed to be a family member, and this is someone
Extended
who's
family
supposed to.
member. Yeah. Hmm.
Right,
Hmm.
and someone who is, supposedly like a man of faith, or trying to become a man of faith, and so
Right.
on.
Right.
And, we don't have to get overly graphic, but, like, how does an encounter like this happen?
It was very groomed, but it was also, now that I can look back on it, it was accepting me. He kept saying to me, "I love you, Kim. I love
Mm,
you,
mm,
Kim," and it was validating. He said, "You're my beautiful Kim. Me and your birthday's the same day, And so at night, when they were going to bed, he would say, "There's a movie on." Not every night, but it would happen about 2 or 3 times a night. There's a movie on that me and Kim, I'll make sure that she gets to bed early. She won't stay up late, and they
mm, mm.
trusted him. And so it started gradually with the come here, I love you, and then started with the kissing on the mouth one week, and then it would just gradually go from one thing to another. It never went into penetration,
Mm,
because I
mm,
remember the one time that happened, and he showed himself. I ran straight to my room, and he never did that again. I think he knew that I got scared. He
mm,
never
mm,
showed me himself again, but it was more of the other stuff, the touching, the kissing, in the
mm, mm.
mouth and stuff like that. The
So
rubbing.
he started grooming you, and I think what's, I say fascinating for lack of a better word, because, and actually, maybe I'll just mention it. There's a book that I'm fairly passionate about. It's called Men Fight for Me. And it's the role of authentic masculinity in ending, sexual exploitation and child trafficking. And I've interviewed this man, and in there he talks about, like, because you think, how do women get caught up in this? Because we look at the majority of victims are female, and they're young females, and they're
Yeah.
usually in a foster care system, and they're looking for something, right?
Yeah.
They're looking for some kind of validation, and a predator knows what kind of validation they're looking for, and
Right.
they don't know how to distinguish between what is the authentic masculinity and what is
It's
a
not, yeah,
predator.
right.
And
Yes,
this
so he
sounds like,
confused the hell out of me because he's still saying, I love you, and this is our secret, and I love you so much, and you're beautiful to me, and and like you said, even at 12, even though I never started my menstrual cycle until I was 13, going on 14, thank God. But I had heart. I mean, I was a female. I knew,
mhm,
and that kind of haunted me until I had to take grips and say, I'm not responsible for whether that was feeling good or not. It was wrong. It
mhm,
was
mhm.
wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you didn't have that emotional development, and
Right.
so the first time it happened, was it like a shock to you?
Yeah, it was. It was a shock. Like I said, the kissing in the mouth.
Right.
And I remember him thrusting his tongue in my for the first time, and I'm like, whoa, like, and but he, held me, and this
Mm,
is like a thing that I'm yearning because I never got that from my, going back to my
mm,
biological
mm.
foundation, my mom, and he's like, but I love you, you love it, it's okay, it's okay, I love you, so yeah.
Right, right.
Mhm.
Oh boy, that that's like sends shivers down my spine, because that's so, like, manipulative, and
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
so you realize that like, a part of you must somewhat recognize that this isn't right, or this doesn't feel right, or something feels a little bit off about this. Is that right?
At some point, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to disappoint him, and I didn't want no one to be mad at me, and I think that even fell into my mind of not telling my parents because here they might get mad at me. They might say I was responsible. You know what I mean? So
Right, right. They might have
to
said, well,
make
you
sure,
were
yeah,
tempting
exactly.
him
To
or
make sure
something.
everyone's clear and not getting mad. Yeah.
And that would be a protective response, because if we go back to, like, your childhood, you'd seen violence, domestic violence in the home
Yes.
at a very, very young age, which leaves a deep emotional imprint. And so now you go along with this partly because there's this fear of, and I say go along with this for lack of a better term, like, but because of this fear of, well, I don't want to create conflict.
Right. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And and let me add this too. I never felt secure enough that anyone would fight for me either. You know,
Right.
I didn't
Yeah.
feel that security because I felt even when that was happening, lost in this injustice that my mother didn't fight for me to come to get me and reclaim this daughter and
Mm.
raise with my siblings and her new husband. My dad didn't fight and come and get me and join me with his family. Who in the hell were going to fight for me?
Right. Yeah. And so this went on for, you said, for a little over a year. Is that right? Before you realized, okay, this is
That's
going too
before
far.
a
Hmm.
year, yeah. But yeah, close
And
to. It was long enough. It was long enough. It
yeah.
was months. And then
Right.
he ended up because it would have kept on. He ended
Right.
up, like I said, I tell the whole truth and I'm very transparent. Like I said, the penetration never happened, thank God.
Mhm, mhm,
But
mhm,
other stuff did. Everything
mhm.
else that you can imagine did. And he ended up finding a girlfriend, and my adopted mom, what he called her his sister too, because this is an extended
Mm,
family
mhm.
member that wasn't blood there, but that was like my uncle introduced me as,
Sure. Yeah.
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 And so she said, well, let me meet this girlfriend, and so talk in the house. This was a worldly female, which
Mm,
was good
mm,
for
mm.
me because this took him away from the house. But she said, oh my gracious, now you're going to be out of church. I can't help you. I don't understand why you and your brothers, the women, are going to be y'all's downfall forever. So make a long story short, he ended up leaving because of, she said, this worldly woman. But when he left, John, I went in a depression mode. So now
Mm,
I'm 13 and they didn't even know. I just isolated my mind and I was depressed because here, even though that was wrong 2 or 3 nights a week and left me confused, it was attention.
right. Yeah. It was giving that part of your brain that was longing for some sort of
Yes,
connection, some sort of
yes.
validation, and that was taken away from you.
Now I lost.
Yeah.
Now you they done took. Yes, I'm like, what the hell? Oh my gracious, yes. Yes, John,
Yeah.
you got it. Yeah.
And all this while, like you're going to school, you're going to high school, you've got some friends and whatnot. So, at that point, did you ever tell your mom and dad? And when we say mom and dad, we're referring to your adoptive parents. Did you ever tell them this was taking place?
I told him my father passed away when I finally told my adopted mom. My adopted dad never knew. I
Mm.
couldn't find myself to tell him. Many times I wanted to, but
Hmm.
I just couldn't find myself to tell him.
Was that because like he would have felt some sort of guilt or responsibility for it happening and within himself?
Um, as I got older, once again the protective mode. I didn't want him to be hurt
Mm,
and lay blame or also um, feel like he didn't protect me. I just wanted to.
right.
I wanted to relieve. I didn't want to bring that pain. So no matter what pain I was going through, I didn't want to bring that pain to him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And so this leads to you getting into probably some less than ideal relationships then, because now you're looking to replace what was taken from you.
There you go. This is what led to 15-year-old getting pregnant the first time.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so was this someone that you felt like you loved or that that cared
I
about you?
liked him. I liked
Yeah.
him a lot. He was
Yeah.
older. He was driving a car, but I didn't have any siblings there to talk to. It was definitely not on the table to talk to with my adopted parents because my adopted mom had so many nicknames that she called the body parts.
Mm-mm.
She said that you get pregnant by swallowing a black watermelon seed. I mean, it was just so crazy of from her generation to bringing
Right.
it to me, you know.
So now you're
So
terrified of swallowing
right,
watermelon seeds.
right. Definitely that wasn't on the table of me even comfortable enough to say, and like I've did this total opposite with my daughters.
Mm,
Talk to me. This is an open policy here. We're going to talk about emotions. We're going to talk about feelings. We're going to talk about intimacy. We're going to talk about sexuality. Here's the names. I really did not. If it wasn't for home economics and the nurse and the stuff that was going on in school that was turning in that generation, I would have
mm.
probably been so naive of everything. But the school and my friends educated me more than my family, and that is such a sad no. That is just a no because you know
Mm-mm.
what happens, John, when you're
Yeah.
looking for your friends and your the school to educate you on something that the family need to be educating you on. Yeah. So
Right.
yeah.
So you get pregnant, and what's kind of running through your mind when you like find out that okay, I'm pregnant? Like, were
I
you aware that this was a
I I
possibility?
I didn't. I just knew that months of ditching school, and I was doing very well when I met this guy that was driving that I thought that was the coolest, and was an
Mm-mm.
older guy that finally having attention for me. Um, I was in high school, doing very well, and ditching school and months was John doing almost the same thing. I was, um, what's the word? I was,
Like, how much older was he than you?
he was 4 years older than me. He lied and said that he was in school. He had, had
Mm-mm.
graduated, but he had graduated. He was older than me. It was 4 years. Yeah,
And at that age, that's actually still a pretty big gap.
it is. It is. And I just liked him with him driving and everything, and that once again he had a situation. But I remember months of repeating. There it is, repeating the same
pattern.
cycle
Mm.
of intimacy, or the need, craving that need that I was doing with my uncle. For months, I did the rubbing and until it got to that almost where he wanted to, go
Mm.
to the last. And I would get scared and I would say, "Oh, my stomach hurts," or da da da.
Mm. Mm.
So for months, I had done that till I never forget. I was all like excused out, and I never forget. He was just like, "Come on now," da 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 da. And I was just like, "Okay." So that's how my first sexual
Right.
experience of breaking my virginity was, like giving up of my
Right.
choice, and my, being like, okay, you know what? I can't think of another excuse. I done played this long enough. Let me just go ahead and do it. And
Right.
that
Yeah.
first time I got pregnant. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, how did he respond when he found out you were pregnant?
Well, my mom told him, so he was up to the, he definitely, um played his part as a father, and stepped up and everything. But I found out running cross country, and I fainted. And even though the nurse kind of thought that I was, she called my mom and told my mom to take me to the doctor. Why did we go to the pediatrician doctor, John? Went to the pediatrician doctor, 15 years old, and she says, she's pregnant. She's like, I think I was like 4 or 5 months. And she said, my
Mm.
mom was like, what? And I've been still giving her baths naked in the tub, pregnant where? Because I was still this thin,
Mm.
flat. And I just was like, I frozen again. Here's this
Yeah.
now,
Forward.
not
Yeah.
little girl, but now a big girl, frozen, shocked. Like, what in the world is going to happen to me? So I remember I ride home, and she said, now, I'm going to tell your dad, you just be there, present. I'm going to tell your dad, and he's not going to be pleased about this. That humiliated me so bad. That tore my heart up.
Mm.
And I didn't say anything. Then she said, we also going to have a meeting with the pastor, your PodMatch. You're going to tell him. That was another
Oh man.
humiliation.
Just
So
just piling it on.
John, yes, yes. So all this happened during these 9 months, these meetings, and this devastation that I'm just like. And then one of my uncles, I remember, that was really close to, that looked like my father a lot. They resembled, and they
Mm.
were close in age, and it was like connecting with him because I couldn't have my father. So I
Mm.
connected with him a lot, with the fact that he's not doing this, what the other extended family was doing. And there may be something true to this. Even when he was told that I was pregnant, he started showing differences towards me. I was like, oh my gosh. So like you said, it was just
So
piling on, piling
yeah,
on. Yeah.
almost like feelings of a little bit maybe of abandonment coming back again, because all these
Coming back.
people are their shame is causing them to disconnect from you and to relate to you in a different way now.
Yeah. So she sat down, and after she told my dad, and my dad, I don't think he knew how to cope with it. Now, mind you, he's about 10. He's over 10 years older than her, even though
Mm.
they're up there in age. But I didn't think he knew how to cope with it. Even though I knew he, now that was no doubt that he loved me and he wanted to
Mm.
protect me. He was very quiet during the whole time that I was pregnant. He did not say too much. The conversation changed. I just kept looking at him and saying sometime at night, I really messed up this time. I really hurt him. So that was something that I had to live with and deal
Mm.
with, because I felt like I hurt it. The one person that I knew without a shadow of a doubt that could protect me, and that loved me. And
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
I did this, you know.
Right.
And so she did say, now she was more of the controlling and the uh um
Like
powerful
disciplinarian or
person.
yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, in the house. He was the foundation. He was the spiritual one. Even though he
Mm.
disciplined me, but he was more the spiritual one, and the one that laid the balance. So he wouldn't let me play against him, but he laid the balance.
Right.
Um,
Right.
of trying to create this broken foundation and love and with some morals and ethics. He was the one, so she said, she did a lot of the talking. And after she said to him, yeah, she's pregnant and there's so many weeks, and yeah, it's that boy Willie, and and then she saw, the conversation turned to me, and then she said, and Miss Lady, if you were 12 years old and you got now mind you, John, they don't know what happened to me at 12, but she's saying,
man. Yeah.
If you were 12 years old and this happened to you, you would still have this baby, because in this family we do not believe in abortions. So now, Miss Lady, since you got this is her talk. Since you got yourself in this situation, you are a woman now. You have no more birthdays, because now, mind you, I'm 15 and we got the due date. We're analyzing the due date. She's going to come just before I turn 16. So it was always talk about a 16-year-old sweet 16 birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So she made sure I knew right then that day, no more birthdays for me, because all of my birthdays, now that I got myself in this position, goes to my kid. So John, for 9 months, mentally, physically, I was warped. I just did the best the hell that I could in that talk, that she resonated in my mind, that what situation I got myself into, whether I wanted to be or not, I am a woman now. So I do the part.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. So your daughter's born, and
daughter's born July, and I turned 16 in August.
Okay, so this happened over the summertime. So you weren't at school at that time. So then you got to try to go back to school with an infant daughter. Mm-hmm. Was there any kind of support?
But she watched her.
Mm-hmm.
It was more I just felt such like a disgrace to everybody, to my friends, to the school, to I just felt like I did it. I really messed up this time, and so I couldn't come home and talk. I felt like, and I say that in the chapter of my book, a silent cry, that I was crying every day, but I it was silent. I could not release it. Who cared that I released it? Who was going to fight for me to release it? So I just tried to do the part, fit the part, and seeing mentally it wasn't working. I felt lost going back to school, and I tried it for a couple of months. And I remember coming back home and saying to her, I decided to go and get a job. I said, I'm going to work. I'm going to quit school. Her response, my mom's response, because she was keeping the baby at the time, was okay. And that's how I ended up quitting.
So you end up getting yourself a job, and and trying to raise this kid with the help of your mom and your dad along the way, and the
father. He was supportive, but even at this time, I'm being introduced to, because he's older. I get introduced to the first experience of someone cheating and putting their hands on me. I lied about him putting their hands on me, but I was crushed about the cheating. And this is what my mother said. She said, all men cheat. She said, the only ones that doesn't cheat is the ones that's dead and the ones that can't, because of a physical reason. Yes. So I was just like, wow, so this pain is real, and it's going to have to happen probably again. But so I remember our first physical altercation, and I think it was a slap, but it kept getting worse over time, that I stayed with him, and finally I just said I couldn't take no more when I was got pregnant again for the second time by him. It just made me feel, as you said, me looking back from my birth mother, is that maybe this is acceptable. Is this how someone that says they love you really treats you? Maybe if I'm a better girlfriend, maybe it will stop. Maybe he is sorry, so
man, because you never, again, it goes back to never having that foundation, never really understanding what maybe authentic love really is. And so it's like almost, how do you know what to look for, And so now you've got a second daughter. How far apart are your daughters?
10 days from 2 years. One was born July 31st and one was July 21st.
Okay.
In 2 years. Yeah.
And so now you've got two daughters. You've got a job because you're trying to make ends meet.
Right.
And this fella, he starts abusing you because you're having altercations, and that's how men seem to resolve altercations.
Right. Right.
So you go, okay, that's it, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you go from there?
So, while I was pregnant, there was a gentleman that was liking me, and my mom encouraged me to let him know, that I was pregnant. He was very supportive near the end of my pregnancy and my decision of not going back to their father and dealing with the same treatment. But because he had military background and because he had income solid enough, and he, as my mother said, accepted me with a child and having another child, that when I told her that we were going to live together and be together, she said, you why shack? We don't shack. When you shack and you feel that if you're good enough to sleep with him at night, you're good enough to marry. So they signed, well, she did, for me to marry him just before I turned 18.
Right. So because at that age you're not legally permitted to. Right.
Right.
So now you're married with two kids, just at 18 years old.
This is unbelievable. It's believable. It's true.
I know. I mean, of course, I'm looking at this through the lens of my understanding around behavioral psychology as well, and I'm just hearing all of these things and I say cringing, but I just mean, because I have the benefit of understanding now and the benefit of hindsight and experience. I look back and I go, oh, if only, if only we knew this, what we know now back then, it could have been different, but it didn't turn, So how did things go with this fella?
It didn't last a year. We wasn't ready. Yeah.
No, of course, because you're a kid.
Right.
You're a kid with kids.
And out of all the marriages, like I said, he was very a nice guy. It's just we wasn't married. And I was very upfront with, as I had always been with my mother and my father, a little bit, as she said, she passed away in April of this year. That I talk too much. I tell too much of my business or whatever, but I also was mindful of, as she and my dad taught me, to speak the truth. Right. Never be ashamed and to speak the truth. So it just played hand in hand with me that she didn't really like. But
she didn't like the truth.
Exactly. So, but I did not hide about my feelings of liking him, but just wanting to get a place and move out of there. Out of their roof. And she thought otherwise. She's just was from that generational era. She kept moving it from what she was taught to now. I'm going to teach her that your body is too good to just lay up with a man. You get married, whether you love him or not. You get married. Yeah. So.
Right. And so, did you have to go back to your mom and dad's place?
No. No, I never went back there.
Yeah, no, that's it. No, not going back. So now, then, at that point, are you trying to live on your own?
Yes, I'm still in my hometown. I'm going through different relationships, being just honest with older men. Now I'm searching. I'm lost, but I'm falling with older men now. To just feel this. I think I was trying to feel that uncle thing again, that disconnection, and here my dad, I had disappointed him so much. He was my protector, and he used to brush my hair, and he used to, but once I got pregnant, all that changed, so.
Right. Yeah. Seeing you differently. You're no longer like a little girl in a sense.
Exactly. I still was his daughter, but I'm sorry. But I was definitely different in his eyes, and I kept trying to search for something different, and was searching for the same, searching for what I was yearning, in older men. So I'm going through, that, and I meet another older man across about 2.5 hours from where we live, and I found myself now running. All this time, John, I'm living in my hometown where my birth mother is. I'm like not even 2 hours away from my birth father. Both of them have different families, different husbands, other children. And no one, especially my birth mother, never kept in contact with me.
Mm.
So I'm still like devastated. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to deal with this trauma of, I know she was told. We only have one hospital in our hometown. I know she was told that I was pregnant. I know she told that I had the
Mm.
baby. But my adopted mother was there, but no gifts, no phone calls, nothing had happened since the day that I left her from her.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, get some roller skates on, girl, and get the hell out of your hometown.
Right. Yeah.
For them. And check this out, John. I was leaving for them. I was leaving for her to have her life and my siblings to have them without me having to want to be in their life. Since I made such a disappointment, I felt, having a child, dropping out of school, what the hell should I be in the hometown living around them for?
Right. And now you've got 2 kids.
Exactly.
And a failed marriage.
Yes. Yeah, get that. Yeah. I'm
You
just
know,
doing worse. I'm just going from bad to worse.
one after another. I think, look, we can have a chuckle now, I think, because you've done such incredible work to get to the place where you're at. But I mean, this, I just think back with such compassion for this young Kim, and I think you probably, look back and also,
when I had to revisit this in a memoir, I had a therapist too. I just kept breaking down and I kept breaking down. And I remember saying to her, "Do you think I'm crazy?" She said, "No, you're human."
Yeah, you're human.
You're human. She said, and you have every right to have those feelings.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And so you left your hometown, got 2 hours away. You're going to try and build a new life.
Met my second husband. Yeah.
Met your second husband. Okay.
He's 11 years older than me.
Yep.
Accepted both of the 2 kids. Didn't have any kids.
Yep.
History. Not too long. Been out of being incarcerated. I just go from bad to worse.
But but again, there's probably getting some kind of validation that you were looking for, because again, you're still, you weren't given this level of understanding that you now have when you work with other people. You weren't given this level of understanding. This pattern is playing out on repeat because you're looking to meet a need,
Right.
So you meet your second husband, 11 years older, and he did you start living together? I guess you did if you get married.
Yeah, because his mom, he got really upset with his mom because his mom, spilled the beans. She was very, she had to tell me, this young girl, coming in himself, and she was like, "Have you wondered why, he doesn't have a place of his own? And he has to call me and whatever." So he went. That should have been a warning sign for me then. But as you said, I was young. Because
how old are you this time?
He clerked out. He cussed her out. I was probably like 19, going on 20. Yeah, 19. Yeah, 19, maybe.
And so he really let her have it verbally.
Oh my gracious! Oh, I never seen him that angry. And I remember saying it to him. I was like, "Cool down, calm down. This is your mom." But once again, like you said, this broken foundation and not me even learning or taking the time to accept me and learn me and love me, I felt needed, I felt wanted, I felt like I could help, and all that played a part in me.
Well, maybe seeing this broken human and going, "Well, I'm a broken human too," without and if I could help him, maybe I could find healing in helping another one or something. Right. And this idea that, okay,
and it was an attraction. As you said, that brokenness is real. It was an attraction because I now look at my relationships down the line, this broken attraction. I really believe every last one of them I came into mentally and emotionally broken. And that was an attraction because they were too.
Yeah.
And some degree. Yeah.
And how, so this one, obviously, I'm not sure, like, how long did this one last?
Oh, now this stayed longer.
Okay.
Thank you, John. But this was I almost did 9 years in this. Did 9 years in this,
yeah.
He was with me when my dad passed away.
Okay.
And when my dad passed away, he was the one that told me that spiraled to another grief and depression that led to, it wasn't the cause of the marriage not working out, because there were physical altercation with him too.
Right. So he became physically abusive as well,
and emotional abusive because he was older, and he would. And one of his saying was, "No one would love you like Manny. No one would love you like me." And
Right.
then he would say, as the years would build up, as no one's going to want you with 4 kids. No, he would,
Right.
he would do things and he would say things to make me feel not worthy, not my self worth was
Mm-mm.
just, and yeah. So
Just to control you and I guess
yeah,
keep you in that
yeah,
relationship. And,
yeah. Hmm.
and so if you're saying 4 kids, does that mean that you had 2 kids with him? Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So you must be getting close to 30 now at this point,
I'm growing in
Yeah, yeah.
age.
Yeah, you're getting close to 30 and
Yeah,
you
yeah.
had this chaotic and so
Because by the time I was 24, yeah, let's make for
mm,
the viewers to follow. By the
yeah,
time I
yeah.
was 24, I had 4 kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. At 20 yeah, so and then you realize
The
okay, well
last one was born in 97. Hmm.
yeah, okay. No, so I got to get out of here now.
Hmm.
Okay, so you
Hmm.
decide I'm getting out of here. This isn't
Yeah.
working.
Well, after my dad passed away, it just kept getting worse. The more I wanted to invest, well, I wouldn't say invest in myself because that's what I wasn't doing. The more I wanted to be more self-sufficient because
Mhm.
I wasn't looking at my children, my girls, too much seeing what I was going through and the unhappiness, but I was trying to get them to see, especially when one time he took the bank card, that I had to go back and get some education. I had to go back to
Mhm.
school. I had to show them that if something did happen to me underneath this roof, I was able to, or happen to him, I was able to take care of them financially
Right,
because it
right.
hit me so hard. Not so much, I mean, and over time, it had to play where I said, oh no, I am, as I had his daughter, I said, and I used to tell him, if I ever get the courage to leave, you'll never get me back. It's just
Mm.
that I have to get the courage. And you wouldn't think I was joking. He said, you're not going anywhere, da 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 da. And he would play games, mind games or whatever. But I warned him months, probably
Mhm.
years. And until I just chose to, regardless of wanting to live for my kids and wanting my kids to be in a two-family home, I couldn't take it anymore.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And did he ever take out any of that physical aggression on the kids or only on you?
No, no, just me. Hmm.
And did they ever witness that?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. One of the daughters, the last Candy, the middle girl, one
Mm.
time got into it, got in the middle of us.
Trying to get it to
Started
stop or
trying to protect me. Yeah, trying to protect me.
and
See,
she was how old?
she was probably in her early teens at that time.
Man. And so are all 4 of your children girls?
No,
Oh, you have a
the
son there
last
too.
adult child is a boy. Yeah,
Okay. She's
yeah,
got three
yeah.
three daughters and a boy.
The last
Okay.
adult one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Aw. And okay, so we go now where do you go from here? So you
So
decide, okay,
yeah,
I've gotta I've
yeah,
gotta get myself out of this.
yeah.
Is
I remove myself, but I'm still. And now that I think back, I could not. I felt even more lost because I had my dad was gone and I couldn't verbalize it. I couldn't
right.
mentally, and then even when he passed away, my my adopted mom, his wife, sold the house within 2 years. I don't want to.
Right.
I hope I'm accurate enough, but it
Mm-mm.
wasn't long before she sold the house. So there's my foundation. Be it
Yeah.
without she even letting me know. She just told
Just
me
being
I'm going into a senior living assistant place. I done sold the house. I'm like, what the hell? So even if he's beat me to a pulp, I can't go back home. Ain't no
right.
home, you know. So
Oh
I'm like,
man.
and when he passed away, I remember crying all the way from 2.5 hours to get there. And my kids, matter of fact, the two oldest ones was spending the summer there. So they were there when he passed away because the one
Mm.
is really close to her grandfather. Took it very hard. And when I got there at the funeral and everything, she pretty much like gave all his stuff to my dad and to my uncles, and I'm just here silently like, what about me? I knew her, his other his older kids. They came to the funeral. They were very respectful. They let me line up and be ahead of
Mm-mm.
them and everything like that. They spoke to me and they were very respectful. But when it came to the only thing that, and it really did something to me, but it helped shape the way I had to deal with then her funeral, because I then had to understand their family dynamics. And so
Mm.
she felt that her siblings um needed, or had more um
Like need of her possessions or everything.
his possessions than me.
Mm.
So I ended up with a robe and his Bible. But I'm so glad that I ended up with his Bible, because I have it by my bed.
Mm.
And now I'm just going to get back to the story. But mentally and emotionally, that was my first experience of a death loss that was so crucial. I did not know how
To
to get
grieve.
myself back. Yeah,
Mm.
I did not know how to get myself back. I was just spiraling everywhere. And I was still in the ministry. I was just doing whatever I thought that I could to validate, to make him proud, or to redeem this so devastating, destroyed life, as
Right. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
lined up,
Yeah.
that I've done had.
Yeah. So you're trying to do something to sort of piece this back
Yes,
together,
yeah. I'm
Man,
struggling.
okay.
I'm
Y
struggling.
At
But
that
we're
point,
divorced. But I'm struggling. I'm struggling.
you're somehow gonna make that work. So,
Hmm.
you get the courage to leave,
Hmm.
and, how did he take it? Like, if he like,
He didn't
once
take it well at all.
right?
Yeah, he didn't
Because
take it
someone
well
who's
at all.
losing control doesn't take
Right.
it well.
No, he didn't take it well at all. And I went through a betrayal of experiencing confidential stuff that I told him that happened in the ministry, that I knew that was true. He manipulated it to work in his favor to get the house. I walked away from nothing. I didn't.
Mm.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, so now you've gotta rebuild again.
I do.
And you're were you about 30 at this time?
Yeah, yeah. You're
30,
about right.
30, 4 kids, trying to rebuild from nothing. You've had some losses. How do you do that?
So I go through two more marriages. Two more marriages. The one, he was in the ministry. It didn't last even a year. It was just doing something that I thought that um, I was in the ministry and so heavy in, and um, just because someone says the Lord told me you were going to be my wife, I kind of captivated it. Yeah, not
Right.
even knowing, not even trying to figure out, to know
Right,
this
right, right.
person inside out. But lesson learned. And then I married my minor, my child that I have now, 6 years old, father, and that lasted almost 3 years. But I walked into that as an accepting of someone's broken, someone needed my help. I'm broken and I can help, and we can accept each other just where each other is.
Mm.
So it didn't, our lifestyle was totally different. And I knew that I was just compromising, which
Right, right,
now
right.
I've learned I can choose not to, especially when I
Right.
know that my lifestyle is not that way. He was a drinker and he was a smoker, and his prior history of drug use was totally different from mine. But
Mm, mm.
here again, I'm like, if you can accept all this shit that I done and
Yeah.
had, for sure, why should I accept you? And we can
Right,
just build
right.
this life together. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And somewhere along the way, you got yourself an education as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I even being misdiagnosed from PTSD. I was in resource for 6 years, and they diagnosed me in my elementary school year of mild retardation. But I went back to school,
Mhm.
and my that first, well, that second marriage, that he was 11 years older than me, got my high school diploma,
Mm.
enrolled into my hometown. This was the first program that they offered. Do you get the high school diploma, the same diploma that you would get in high school? And guess what, I was picked out of the one of the fives to talk about my life. If I
Wow.
had it, I said, who
No
would have
kidding.
known?
Yeah.
Exactly, who would have known? Well, just me. But
And
yeah,
you
so
you
that
said what
was my, huh.
I was gonna say, you said one minor detail there that maybe isn't so minor, but you passed over, and that was at a certain point in your life, you were diagnosed as having sort of mild you said mild retardation, we might call it cognitive impairment. What they
Yes.
didn't realize was this was actually PTSD.
Yes. Yeah.
So
I couldn't retain information. So
yeah,
they
traumatized brain.
yeah, yeah, I would for 6 years, I started with resource, and I had this book called Izzy that I read every year. But when it came to numbers, like I could get to an example of 25 one day.
Mhm.
The next day you would ask me to start counting, and I would just stop at 19. I couldn't go. I just couldn't
Mhm.
retain information. So they did their testing at that time, which was not a lot in the
Right.
70s. And here again, with me being adopted, and I didn't even know that I was adopted. They just went by the forms that they got. It wasn't no kind of history of peeping into where did this girl come from? What life did
Yeah.
she come from? You know, so
Yeah. No kidding.
yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay. You know, oh man. Okay. So now you're past, was it your fourth marriage?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. And you got yourself an education and whatnot.
And I went to college.
And went to college. Yeah. In your
Yes.
30s.
I went to college. Matter of fact, the divorce I think was final that month or in that year that I graduated from
Okay.
my undergrad. For yeah, all my
And
kids were there.
well, see,
Yeah,
that is
yeah,
something quite remarkable.
right.
Um, and so
Something especially that the academically they said on paper that I would not read or write effectively.
mhm. And here you're graduating from
Right.
university or college. Yeah. Yeah. With and what was your college education in?
A BA and human growth and development, and a minor in psychology and counseling.
Yeah. So you must have had like so many aha moments when you're studying this stuff, I would think.
Right, right.
When you
And
go,
crying
"Oh,
moments. Yeah,
yeah, no
yeah,
kidding.
yeah,
Because there's
yeah.
probably a feeling of like, why couldn't somebody have known this earlier? Why couldn't I have
Yes,
encountered somebody
yeah,
who knew this earlier?
yeah.
Man, that would have saved me from so much, you know?
And the rewarding thing about it is even when I was adapting a different learning style for just that would work for me, because I
Mm-mm.
still get tongue tied. I might talk like educated people, but I can say something and it's all backwards, and then even processing. If you hear
Mm.
me pause some, it's because I have an issue of processing, and I had to learn to adapt a different learning style that works for me to process it. No matter how crazy it might look to someone, and I've been told, sometimes my exes will be like, "You just stare at me like I said something wrong," and I'm like, "I'm trying to think. I'm
I'm
processing what
trying to
you
process.
said."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And my kids kill me because they're like, "Okay, all right, we're gonna let you have your moment for a minute,"
Yeah. Yeah.
but even so, when I started educating myself and going through the school and the books and stuff like that, I start getting tickled and just having, like you said, the aha moment, because I start thanking God, because my resource teacher that I had, and she never gave up on me. She kept working with me for the whole elementary school years, and she didn't look like me. She didn't look
Mhm.
like us, and she would not force. She said to my parents, I remember, she may be seen by someone else. Like she encouraged them some outside help,
Mm-mm.
but their response was prayer changes things. That's all they knew back
Right.
then,
Right.
even then. And so she just let it be, but she still would not let that hope. And she kept saying to me, and she was building me unconsciously, not knowing. That's why I just give so much kudos to teachers and stuff, because that was
Mm-mm.
one that said to me, "You are a special child," and she said, "I'm not going to give up on you." And she
Wow.
and
Yeah.
if that and if I did not have her, trust me, my route would have been differently. But
Mm.
that was
Mm.
someone that was in the educational
Figure.
aspect or
Yeah.
sector, yeah, that I was blessed to have, that said, and called it like it is. She said, "You're a special child." She said, "But I will not give up on you." So
Mm-mm. She saw something in you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So after the fourth marriage and the divorce is finalized, you've got your undergrad degree. At what age are you now at that point?
After the fourth marriage, I'm in my late 30s.
Okay.
Yeah, going
Yeah.
into my 40s. Yeah.
And so where do you think now, where do you go from there? The number of times I've asked that question, but where do you go from there? Fourth marriage is over, but you have a degree. So now you have a way to maybe earn a better income because
Right.
you've now got this education behind you. That did that lead you to like better employment and like open some doors for you?
Yeah, and it kept and it also started instilling me, wanting greater, wanting more
Mm-mm.
for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wanting more
Finally,
for
like
me.
realizing you're worthy.
On the financial part.
Yeah.
It had to grow on me with the self-worth part, but on the
Yeah.
financial part, I started getting it. I said,
Yeah. Yeah.
"Okay,
Okay. I'm gonna start to earn some money here.
right,
Some. Yeah.
I can do
Yeah.
this. I don't care how long it's gonna take. I don't care if I fail a test one time. If they offer it again, I'm gonna take it again until I pass it. If there's
Yeah. Yeah.
more money in it, that's what I'm gonna do." So I was
Absolutely.
getting it.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so I'm man. There's so many elements of your story to kind of explore. But let's fast forward to kind of today.
Yeah,
So because we've covered a lot of ground, and I
we
think
did.
for people
I
who want
hope
to know
it
more,
helps
of course.
somebody. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
Like your memoir has got to be just like this crazy interesting read. So you wrote a book as well.
I did. I did.
Yeah,
So this was in my 40s, since
yeah,
we're going down the timeline. And
yeah, yeah.
after that last marriage, you said, well, where do I go from here? I did get involved with relationships in between, and that's going to be
Mm-mm.
in my second book. But I did get in
Yeah.
relationships
What one
with
book can't contain your whole story.
exactly between, and then I got into a relationship after that that marriage that really put the light bulb into it. Broke it was a very toxic breakup where
Mm,
it really made me take a look of the cycle, the cycles of these
mm.
relationships and how I got into them.
The
And
people that you kept looking forward to, it is on repeat, like to fill that same sort of need, and you go, I got to break this cycle.
gotta, yeah, I
Yeah.
and I said, look, especially after that, when I said, God, give me the ability to choose me. Whatever I have to do to break this cycle, to break
Mm,
this cycle of feeling like um, the abandonment issue, the rejection,
mm.
that I can't take it. It's very hard for me to let go and move on. I rather stay in something that I know that's not healthy for me, because I don't want to feel that pain. I don't want to
Mm.
feel that hurt. I don't want to feel not being needed. For what? Why wouldn't I be wanting to be needed? Why wouldn't I want to
Right.
be loved, instead of just accepting that I am not
Right.
for everyone? You know,
Yeah.
and that, like
Yeah.
you said, love don't hurt. And love, once I found out what love isn't, then I started wanting to embrace what love is. Okay,
Right.
show
Yeah.
me and let me embrace it, and give me the heart that I'll be open to knowing what love is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think about your kids, like, and all that they've seen, and like your oldest one would be, um,
33. She'll be
33.
34 this year. Yes.
Wow. Okay. So she's seen a lot,
Yes.
and you must have had some epic conversations with her,
Yes. Yes.
you know,
Mhm.
and I think like all of your kids, like just the number of things that I guess they've seen, they've done, they've been through, and now kind of like knowing what you know now, and doing what you do, you know, do you, what are they doing, and how have you like used this experience that you've been through to really kind of help them walk a different path?
Well, I have they're very proud and they're very supportive, even down to the mini,
Yeah, the
the
mini.
6-year-old. I call her, she's almost 60, but she they're very proud, and I really believe the memoir. Um, the oldest one was the first one that read it. She had to go and get it immediately, and some things in the memoir she did not know. Especially
Right.
because all my pregnancies, all the births are in there,
Mm,
especially about, I laid the foundation, but she didn't know, and some things. And I now believe, now that they're grown, all of them are grown except with the many, have seen me fighting so hard to break a generational curse, that makes me
mm,
very humbly and blessed that they are a living witness of that, and that
mm.
no matter what I went through, that I did not allow it to break me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the unbreakable Kimmy Bell.
This is the
uh,
other topic. Yeah, yeah.
this is quite something, and it must feel actually kind of exciting. It's like you have this life ahead of you now with all of this
It's
experience and whatnot.
exciting, and at one time it was it was scary that I had
Yeah.
to come to grips about fear. Because one of the courageous move, I've been courageous in different aspects of my life, like
Mm-mm.
choosing to leave relationships that I knew that wasn't working. But then here's another aspects of being courageous to tell my whole truth, nothing but the truth, and being
Mm-mm-mm.
transparent about my whole life, and still live in my hometown. Um, Also being courageous enough to be loved and build my self-worth and build my self-esteem, then and to accept that I did not have a normal life, beginnings, I should say
Yeah.
beginnings. I didn't
Oh,
have a
yeah.
normal beginnings, and it was
You did
broken.
not get a fair
But
start in life.
yeah, but it don't stop there.
Yeah.
And I can choose for it not to stop there. I can build, I can have. And this is what was so is so such a blessing for them to see now that I'm living this season in my life, is that I'm taking back control,
Mm-mm.
and claiming the life that I want to live, and refusing to live a life of shame, a life of
Right.
fear, and that I'm so worth it. I don't have to be confused about intimacy, because intimacy was, as you know, with your wife, is made to be beautiful between two people.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's made
It's
to
meant
be
to
one
be.
of the lovingest, beautiful experience in the world. And I'm going to get that, John. I'm going
Yeah.
to get that. I'm worth
Yeah.
that. So, but I had to get to
Yeah.
the place. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And what drives you forward now?
Um, whew, uh, consistently, constantly, um, breaking those generational
Mm,
curses. Um, um, my oldest daughter, she had her first child, which she only has that one at
mm,
24. She's a high
mhm.
school graduate. She All of them's high school graduates. She's the first of the siblings that got her master's last year.
Wow.
um I mean, it's just amazing. And all
Yeah.
my children have been with me. All my children, I have, at times I had to accept that, why I overcompensated of them never wanting to feel that the void of me.
Right. Yeah.
I had to give a talk to myself, said, now look, this is when I
Yeah.
had a therapist in my life. Okay, now come back.
Right. Right.
And it's so crazy now, because I'm loving the season that I'm able to still love and be a mother to four
Mm,
adult children, which is different from being a mother to my minor, and
mm,
loving
mm, mm,
loving their sibling just as much, but it's in a different type of way. And I pray constantly. I build my support system,
mm.
which involves God first. And I'm invested in me. I'm doing my nature walks. I'm doing what Kim enjoys doing. I'm breaking every day those feelings of bondage of wanting or expecting a phone call or expecting to be
Mm.
a part, when I can be okay with just me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the subtitle in your book is "Accept and Embrace It All." Is that right?
Yes, yes, yes. And I got
Yeah.
that. I got that during COVID. And each chapter, it came to me, I think about the second chapter, accept and embrace it all. I said, that's it. That's it. And
Mm,
then I had to, like I said, that first chapter gave me so much of such an emotional ride. I talked to my therapist. She didn't even know I was writing a book. Matter of fact, she when it got published, I sent her a book, and she was like, "Oh my gracious!" So
yeah. No kidding.
yeah. So but I broke down, and I
Yeah.
knew that I needed her help,
Mhm.
because still I'm in my hometown. My some of my siblings wasn't supportive of me telling my story. And
Right.
as we talked about, my birth mother, now I'm close to one of my aunts, which is one of her sisters, and she's got a book, and she's very supportive, and we still go out to lunch, and she calls and checks on me and stuff like that, so we
Yeah.
have a really good bond. But she even encouraged her to read it, and she refused to. And I've accepted that broken women that have
Mm,
children, um well, let's say women that have children can be broken too.
mm.
But I am not responsible for her brokenness. That's what I
Yes.
had to accept.
To
And
get
that
to
took
that
me
place. Yeah.
away. Yeah, that
Mm.
blew me away because for years I felt in the bondage of being responsible. As you were
Mm.
saying before, what could I have done? Why this could, how could it have been any different? What could I have done to be any different? Or you know, what was her reason, which I still don't know, to not come back and get me, to fight for me, but just accept
Yeah.
that this was a plan of my life. This was a part of my life that had to be planned out, that had to be
Yeah.
done. Yeah.
And I just wonder if, when she made that break, that she just basically had to cut off that, I don't know if you could say, like, cut off that emotional limb, for lack of a better metaphor,
Yeah.
cut it off, and because it would be too painful to revisit that. And every passing year it would become more and more painful to go back there. And so it had to be like cut off completely. And
Right.
so there's like this emotional shutdown. It's like,
Right.
because if that door was to be opened, it would issue feels like maybe it'd be like it would overwhelm her and drown her
Maybe so.
in like
Yeah.
pain, sorrow, regret,
Right.
remorse,
Right.
all these different feelings. So it's like that door stays firmly shut and is
Shut.
never going to be opened again.
Right.
And,
But
and it's,
here, as a child, and as
mm,
growing up and knowing her, I had to accept that, John. I had
yeah,
to accept
yeah,
that behavior, and that may be her
yeah,
reasoning, and respect that. Do you get what I'm
mm,
saying?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who do you have in your life now that supports you? Who are your supports that help you keep moving forward?
Well, first, my children for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
For children, for sure. I have aunts. I have cousins. I have I have nephews. I really have. I have the best support system that has been willing to had
Mm,
chose to accept me, to accept
right.
him.
They
Yeah.
wanted to be a part of that,
Yes, that wanted to be a part, and I
Yeah,
would not want it no other way,
yeah,
because
yeah.
for years I felt I was chasing
Mm,
after,
chasing validation,
yes, yeah.
and
You're
now
right. That's it.
you don't have to do that anymore.
I don't. I don't.
You're
Yeah.
now living a life of freedom and liberation. Well, boy, we we went a little longer than the usual podcast episode here, but
But you said
wow,
it in a nutshell. Free or liberation. Yes.
yeah.
Yes,
Oh
and it's
man, one heck of a story.
one of the best free feelings. And I would like to say,
Mm,
do I still go through some painful moments and hurt, and is it easy? No, but
mm,
each day gets easier when I
yeah,
choose me, when I consistently put my support system in play, and I keep working on my mentality and working on me. And as you said, choosing me, that, oh my gosh, Kim, you're so worth the life that you want to have.
yeah, yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And I think you answered one of the questions I was going to ask, because people see this, they see it. You can laugh, you can joke, you can have joy in your life despite all of your past,
Right.
but it is still, there are some tough days.
Yeah, they
You
are.
know.
Like I
Eh,
said, my adopted mom passed away in April, and it was a
Mm,
hurtful experience for all of us. And even at the
yeah,
funeral, there was some hurtful experience, for hurtful moments that me and my children will never forget. But at the end of the day, we were, our foundation, their
yeah,
foundation was different, than mine. And I'm just so glad that I was a blessing, that I built that foundation, for them. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's remarkable. And let's see here. I was just going to actually share the cover of your book for people to see, because it's, boy, what a story.
Right.
Um, yeah,
So
it's
that
just,
picture there, I don't have any infant pictures. I don't have any pictures with me and my biological parents
yeah.
at all. But that's the first picture that my adopted parents had of me, and
Okay.
that's why that's so. That's why I chose
Yeah.
that one.
The epitome of Kimmy.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my adopted dad, the Kimmy came from my adopted dad. That was the name that he called me. He would say,
Yeah.
and you were talking about, we can laugh, we can smile. He invested in me. I remember him when my mom, and she wasn't intentionally hurting me. It was just
Mm,
generational talk, was explaining features, and that their skin tone was a lot lighter than mine, both of them. And
right.
she
Okay.
was comparing, and she said that but you don't look like us. Your features, your nose, your mouth,
Mm,
you don't look like us. She had names for everything. She said,
right.
but
Right.
you're still ours. And I remember him looking at my face And I was around 9 or 10, but I knew exactly what she was talking about. So I'm like, whoa, okay. Right. And
Yeah.
so he said to me, he pulled me aside and he said, "Come here, Kimmy, I need to say something to you." He said, I noticed a change. He said, "Stop hiding your smile." He said, "The world gonna need your smile." And
Yeah.
that just resonated, and I would never forget. That's
Oh
why
man.
I think I serve as the angel from him,
Yeah.
looking down.
Yeah.
But I got you. I'm gonna, smile throughout, throughout
Yeah.
until I can't smile no more. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he invested that. He said, "Stop hiding your smile. The world needs your smile." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to just sum up, and just a small nugget of, like from one heck of a story, and it's hard to do it. And I really encourage people to go and
Oh,
read that
thank
story,
you. Yes.
The
And
Epitome
let
of
your
Kimmy.
wife read what she thinks. Yeah, because you guys got a
Yeah.
bundle of joy, and I'm so happy for you all.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations. I
Yeah.
know he's just full of love.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this kid, we said, "Hey, man, if he ever understood what we were saying, we call him, he's the cutest boy in the world. He's the most loved boy in the world." Like we just,
Right.
we're like, "Oh man." But I mean, we're trying to lay down a solid emotional foundation where he just knows love and security from early on.
Yes. Big day.
And
Yes.
yeah, but we got a little later start in life. I was close to 40 when this happened. So
Wow. See, I was
yeah,
42 when I had mine. Yeah. So
yeah,
we still rocking. We're gonna
yeah,
do
yeah.
this. We're gonna do this.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
We're gonna
So
have to take a trip sometime. I have to come and see the mountains with mine.
you
Yay.
do, you
Let us show.
do.
Okay.
Oh, you'd be very welcome to. That'd be
Okay. I
absolutely a
appreciate
pleasure
it.
to.
Yeah,
So, if what would you share with people as kind of the biggest takeaway that you could offer people having gone through all that you've been through? What would you like to say to people?
you don't have to let your past define you, and
Mm,
you have a choice to be free, to be liberated, as you said. The biggest gift, the most important gift that you can give yourself is to choose you.
that's
Invest in you.
amazing.
Yeah.
What amazing words to finish, Kim. Thank you so much. It has been
Thank you,
absolutely such a
John. I
pleasure.
appreciate it. A pleasure to you too. And let your wife know I'm looking forward to hearing from her. Okay.
Will
You
do.
take care of yourself. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to Between the Before and After. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe, or leave a review, because that helps this podcast to reach and inspire more people. I love exploring the stories that take place between the before and after, the powerful experiences that shape who we become. And I love human potential. I love the possibilities that lie within us. So whatever you may be up against, I hope these stories inspire you, because if you're still here, your story's not done yet, so keep moving forward.
Anyone can come from any place of brokenness and destitution and build an amazing life.